How's it going, everyone? It's me again, and today I want to talk about something that I've been finding very inspirational, and that is American minimalism. And I mean the music, obviously. um, to begin, I've kind of heard about American minimalism, or maybe even stuff coming before, some of the experimental stuff from John Cage, and I thought that was pretty interesting stuff. People trying to think outside the box of what music normally was and challenging what music could be. But then I saw this documentary, which was, I believe, a BBC thing called, hold on, let me pull that up. Yeah, the documentary is called Tones, Drones, and Arpeggios, The Magic of Minimalism. And after watching this documentary, it just was like a catalyst to my interest in this. I'm not going to try to explain anything to you like I know what I'm talking about. Documentary goes over it very well. There's plenty of other people on YouTube who know a lot about it. It can tell you a lot in details. But I just wanted to share that I found the concept very inspirational, and I wanted to share that, and maybe you do too. And just sometimes you just look at American minimalism and you could see parallels between what they were doing and what is just almost common practice nowadays. So it's kind of hard to describe minimalism because there were so many different approaches to it, like the West Coast and East Coast and the different things people did. But to simply put it, it was music that used repetition, repetitive patterns, drones, loops, tape loops were a very common thing. And it would just kind of like play these things over and over. There could be slight modulation throughout. But yeah, you look at what these people were doing, and like these repetitive patterns, tape loops, probability. It was another thing. Like, that's used a lot nowadays. Probability. You guys familiar with generative music? There was also what they called process music, or like descriptive, where it was, instead of having sheet music, it was pretty much instructions on what to do. And sometimes there could have been things that were left up to interpretation of the performing artist, which is another thing it gave to chance, which it's always an interesting thing to think of. Is like, you have a piece of music and it's not going to be the same every time you play it. In the classical sense, that's crazy. But if you think nowadays, or not even that, going back a bit, jam bands or jazz artists, there could be a tune or has a simple melody everyone plays, but depending on who's in the band or in that mix at the time, it can go different ways when you deviate from the main melody, start noodling and soloing a bit. So another parallel with more modern music. Yeah, as I'm editing this, I realized I forgot to point out some of similarities, or how some of these concepts carried over to more modern music. So the drones, we know that came from like Indian music, but we know that's used a lot in ambient. Repetitiveness is used a lot in trance music. Just trance in general needs repetitive things. It's kind of like what shamans use, like drums or whatever, all the time with repetitive patterns. They do that over and over to get a trance state. The whole point of trance, repetitiveness. So trance music plays off of that. Tape loops, that leads us to, maybe like sampling and stuff. So that goes hip hop, rap, house music, anything really now. Everyone's sampling nowadays. So tape music led to that in a sense. Modulation through time, because they were using repetitive patterns. Modulations was used to give it variation, a slight variation of a sort. we see that a lot in electronic music, you know, maybe with through filter sweeps or some other kind of modulation, of course. And then minimalism itself, we have min tech, which is minimalistic techno, literally just direct, right? um, and then probability, and I guess you can even put in process music where it's kind of left up to interpretation. That kind of gives us generative music, which, you know, I find really cool. But yeah, just wanted to interject with those few notes. All right, back to the rest of it. Yet another thing that was in minimalism was like phase music, which often kind of went with tape music. So like the innate nature of a tape machine, you know, the analog ones, they never spin perfectly at the same speed. So when they play the same recording on two different players, they would slowly get out of sync and create these weird like harmonies or kind of beats or whatever in a sense. But that kind of played off um like I said earlier, I'm not going to sit here and try to explain everything to you because I'm no expert on the matter. But if you are interested in it, I would highly recommend that documentary from BBC, Tones, Drones, Arpeggios, The Magic of Minimalism. I'll put the title somewhere, maybe a link possibly, but definitely check that out. It was definitely a good way to get started into it. And then from there, you can explore the different composers and their different pieces. But that's it for now. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.